Namaste.
Namaste. Good morning. Good
Welcome, one and
afternoon. Good
all.
evening.
Yeah, I could say welcome back for most of you. It seems that we're virtual
You've
neighbors
never
now.
left.
Yeah, we've never left. But anyway, welcome back. Today is Q&A, questions and answers, and so we've got a few, and we'll start with those. We'll see where this goes. So for most of you, it's come out of the questions have come out of the global training program. So they have a whole different kind of deeper dive, which I much appreciate, but which might leave some of you kind of like, what are they talking about?
Yes.
But it is the nature of this opportunity is to have a time to interact with the things that are rising in your life, to see how they too are a teaching moment or a showing moment that enriches our relationship with ourselves and existence. So it's proving to be, the questions and answers are proving to be a means by which you can test the perspective or come to some clarity with what is arising, some question regarding what is arising. Ultimately, of course, I want you all to be able to know your own truth and to go with the uncertainty, because through the uncertainty, then you get directly your own information. So there is this holding the uncertainty, and I'm not interested in being the oracle for this age to answer questions from lots of people. So I want to delegate it, and I am delegating, and there are people who can actually maybe even do a better job than me in answering your questions. So we'll have them start coming up here in the Q&A. It won't be Sat Shree. It'll be some kind of derivative of Sat Shree showing up doing that question Q&A. Another opportunity to expand those who are coming up to this opportunities to meet what's there in them that they won't find out until some necessity drives it to the surface. Okay, all right, so good. Just take a second. Be here now with each other. Just dive into that quality of your own presence that lives within your body. It's right here, right now. It just takes a moment to tap into that. That's your access point, your resource point. And your presence is your strength. Your presence is the evidence that divine has come. And is with you. Okay, we don't want to go down that path too far. We've got a 9-day coming up. Well, plenty of opportunity to become fully established in your presence, more than you'll want, guaranteed. So what will go forward now is the Q&A. So we have a group of questions here. Sachmai, you want to
Yes, I'm going to start reading. And the first one is from Sophie. Hey, Sophie.
Okay.
So her question is, Dear Sat Shree, I wonder if unresolved issues from ancestors who might have been forced to hide their religious and ethnical identity for survival reasons can transfer from generations. This topic has risen up on 2 out of 3 retreats I have participated in, one in meditation and one in a state of desperation of not knowing. I suppressed it and explained it as a product of my mind, and that I should not believe in rumors and stories from family members I have heard while growing up. It brings up some sort of existential shame and fear of untruth or have been lied to. Could you speak of the state of not knowing one's history? With eternal love and gratitude, Sophie.
Okay. So, Sophie, it's probably a reflection that you're carrying in like the very genetic design, a stress of your parents or the grandparents or who were subject to it, but it's not limited to that. This is an archetypal structure of being overtaken by something we don't know how to be with, so therefore dark. The human ego tends to transfer anything it doesn't know into a dark or dreaded or unwanted or scary or perilous experience, event, projection. So there are areas of us, most human beings, that we've never had to meet. We live in a fairly entitled world here in the Western world, which is almost all of you, if not all of you. And therefore, we haven't had encounters where we can be threatened by a raging party of teenagers with guns and, who are slaughtering people all around you. So we haven't been exposed to the qualities of terror and overtaking and domination and fear and dread that many people on this planet live with continuously. Rather, we have a tale, a story of the Holocaust, a story of our banning from life, the tale of the cops coming in and taking away your father or your grandfather, and you're suddenly hopeless without the structure of support. There's so many comparables that to take it to just the ancestral lineage is missing the full structure of our vulnerability in a body. And this is what it comes down to. When we come into this body, we are then subject to events that don't happen in our normal consciousness when we're between lives. In this body, we get overtaken, we forget ourselves, and we become this vulnerable organism that can hurt and be burnt and be diminished, that doesn't have enough organization of itself for the first few numbers of years of its life to know it's not you, it is something that's being dumped on you or something that you're picking up that you don't yet know how to handle. So that overwhelmed structure is in all of us when we come to this perilous planet. And it is, because here you have pain, here you suffer, here bad things can happen. Here, the whole structure of existential stress becomes part and parcel with the delight and the aliveness of being in a body. So it's a price we pay when we embody. It's not that you need to meet those things. As a matter of fact, the intelligence of the World Mother often makes us not exposed to those things because our journey of our soul is time for it to go beyond those things and explore into the fuller possibility of humanity. So when we look at what you're describing, these are tangible, real revealings of deeper entrenched aspects of the collective trauma, as well as what has come from your parents and their parents and the immediacy of that. Scientists have found that trauma leaves a biochemical mark in the DNA. And therefore there is some, even if it wasn't your experience, you'll have the echo. And if there's an outer story, then that's how you'll interpret the echo. But all of us, all of our bodies carry the trauma of our birth, carry the trauma of the sudden, abrupt, unwanted events of our childhood. And these are stored as sort of an existential stress, trying to keep our head above water, trying to figure out what's next, trying to figure out what we need to do to survive, to get by, to be loved, to be supported, to be safe. So this principle of safety is always elusive because it requires you shut out all the parts of life that you don't feel safe with. I'm sorry, but that's part of the work. To discover how perilous it is and what kind of grace must be with us that we are not at this moment or in the immediate past or future, long past or future, subject to those same factors. We cannot know the future from the vantage point of fear or safety or that trauma of being born in a body. We have to tap into some other principle, something that lives beyond our body, and rest in that place and be the one with that part of our human embodiment that does not know it's safe, does not know it's okay, does not know that how to be with the inevitable events that can happen at any time in the course of life. It's only in that presence. And the more we're in that presence, the more we find the resilience and the willingness to come no longer determine the future by the biggest organism in our body for creating peril, or the idea of peril, is the mind. Fearing or anticipating bad things or things that would overtake us is really kind of part of the entire design of why the brain has came into existence, to survive, to create some sort of safe place to be in this world. And it serves that function, and it's useful, and it needs to be integrated. But we need to distinguish that from the reality of our own experience and have some faith in the fact that actually we're all being carried on a purposeful current, an intelligence that's beyond those past tracks of our human embodiment that we inherit or get conditioned with. There's nothing more to do with this. It's just the truth. It's what's arising. It's part of what happens when you got born in the family you were born in. And therefore, you're part of your burden as a awakened spiritual being, as a presence, is to hold this and to allow it to show you what there is there. And it will transmute through your presence into a healing force that will go back in previous generations, creating peace wherever those beings may exist in this time, embodied or disembodied, and projecting into the future, 7 generations. Our presence holds the trauma of the past and allows in the present for it to be transmuted into a more full, true, direct relationship with existence. So in a larger context, it's not unique for you. We all carry some burden of that being overtaken by darkness in some way, or that sense of peril. It is what makes consciousness more awake in human beings, while the rest of nature blithely goes on with lions and tigers and bears living in the peripheral of their neighborhood, and they don't even know it. They only have terror when it's chasing them. And then when they're done chasing them and they happen to survive, then they forget. We don't have that grace. We live in this perilous alertness that doesn't allow us to relax unless we teach ourselves how to be in our body. And then we find that actually our body is actually okay. It has tremendous resilience and flexibility. Learns how to shake off those terrible events that for us human beings, we'd be in therapy for 10 years. Mm-hmm. So the secret for Sophie is to continue to be in your body, because your body carries the purpose. Your body carries the echo and the memory and the programming of the past too, but it also carries the unfolding opportunity. That's why the body is the field, chapter 13, and that you are the knower of the field. When you discover your power, your authority as the knower of the field, then all this is just more life showing up. Right now, Satchimaya and I are in a perilous transition. We not only had to move out of our house and as they tear apart the entire kitchen and perhaps things we don't yet know, we ran out of water yesterday and nobody knows who turned off the water. So
or how to turn it back on.
Or turned it back on. So 24 hours we've been without. It's only the local Dollar General that gives us water.
Thank you, Arjuna.
So yeah, there is a number of ways. I can't say that I'm not cranky about this transition because I come out and there's nothing here. It's either there or there or there or some other place.
Yeah, luckily we have a trailer we can at least sort of move into.
Yeah, it sort of is. So transitions are inevitably going to bring up issues that would otherwise lie happily in the background. But you are in a transition, as many of you are. And therefore, these transitions will keep showing up things that are really particular to the transformational process you're in. And this more movement towards greater awareness also makes you more aware of that which is not able to be aligned. So this is for all of you, of course, not just Sophie, but it is the nature of the Q&A. All right, so I pulled back. I answered that question. Thank you, Sophie.
All right, so next is Danielle. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correct, but dear Sat Shree, this is the first time I show myself to you, even if it is by asking a question this way. I will come forward on screen after a year of following you as a student in the shadow. You are not alone. We meet you all the time. My question is, how can I incarnate my left side of my body fully? Let me explain a bit. I am struggling with my left side. My right feels fine, complete, whole, and at home there. But the left side feels tensed. Every trauma event in my life happens on the left side and has left its mark in that part. 4 weeks ago, I worked with my somatic experiencing therapist on a trauma in my left arm. And a week ago, again. That last time it showed that I was still holding on, literally, to the place I really come from, my real home. I held the arm of my therapist so freezed that she asked if I could say, I will let go. I couldn't say it. It brought me to tears. So she said, let's turn it around. You don't have to let go. And the grip of my hand relaxed more. The image of holding an angel appeared in my inner side. They, my family from my real home, are here with me, although I can't hold them physically. For me, it feels like my whole left side is really having a hard time to land here on earth. But I also notice that this is my time to really embody this body and life here. Can you say something about this one side embodiment? With my whole heart, thank you, Daniel.
All right, beautiful. So Danielle, wave your hand.
If she's on. There she is.
Okay.
Nice to meet you. Now everyone else has met you.
Yeah, now we know. Well, this is the correct step. Coming out of the shadows of your unwillingness to come here to the planet, or the parts of you that are unwilling to let go of the clan that are all around you on the subtle world, who are not currently embodied, or if they are, they're their subtle body. And we all carry this clan of beings to some extent, our own angels, our own guides from past lives. And they come and they're part of the mother holding her children, keeping the opportunity of human life preserved enough for they can come into their next evolutionary step. So you got it right. The issue is not willing to be in the world, the part of you that's hanging on. And they're right there because they have no role to play unless you give them attention. And if they're right there and they feel bring you security and safety, well, the only reason you're not healing the trauma of your left side is because you aren't letting them go on or step back at least to allow you to form and meet the challenges and the lessons. So you're like many people who I meet these days who are born very alert, born already very developed, that you came into the planet to help serve the world in its transition. And that's the ultimate purpose of why you're showing up. So that it's time to move on. And of course, being more alert, you're more vulnerable, more sensitive, more overwhelmed by things where a normal child would not have. And so therefore you've found a refuge. So this is part of your childhood. Just like a child has fantasies and dreams, they're just connected to the beings that came with them. So this idea of coming out of your childhood and growing into your adulthood, of course, is the reason you were born. And if we don't learn to get the courage and the sense of the purpose, one or the other or both ultimately, then we can live in this bypass, in this alternative back door that we can go to whenever things come up in our life that we don't want to be with or don't know how to be with. So we have to stand in our own, in the truth of what we are, and find a quality within ourselves that's not dependent on others around us, be they embodied or not. Because it's only here that we evolve. It's only here that we move on our journey of consciousness. And it's not enough to be awakened. Awakening is just a start. From awakening, then we discover what we've awakened to, but also first what we've awakening from. So you're in the process of awakening to the structure in yourself that has separated you from fully being manifesting your awakening. So there's a number of ways to do. First, my suggestion is you just set an intent, which I believe your letter reflects, your question reflects, to come into life. Then what will happen is other beings, other forces, and if in your link with me, if you tap more fully into our link, then you will find a strength to go beyond. And it's probably what's already happening. The embedded trauma on the left side of your body. Scientists, somewhere along the line, I heard that the left side of the body, its troubles or its effectiveness, strengths, comes from our ability to manifest. So, like we have a yin and yang brain, right? So the left side of the body reflects the unlived parts of your life.
Also consider the feminine side.
And it would be a same with the yin yang. It's the yin would be the left, and the yang would be the right, the male, and versus the female. So it's clearly that for men and women, the actualizing force that comes with the yang has to learn to come forward to first allow you to come in as an individual in the world. And of course, to some extent you have. I mean, you wouldn't be here doing this if you didn't. But then there's the other part, which is our vulnerable child self. It's the part where we're still clinging to something of the past or where we're unwittingly stuck in trauma that forced us to come out, to go into the refuge of our past journey. So it works in the physical world, it works in the subtle world. The fact that you're recognizing it means you have access to both. There's nothing more to do, but I would suggest the work we do is a lot about embodiment. But there is a psychological component to this, a place where you say, no, I don't want to. I don't want to be here. And that part is the problem in a certain extent, because I can see looking at you that you have established authority in your life. You have established boundaries. And that's what you're looking for, is to bring forward. You're already bringing forward the right side more, but you're leaving this little refuge behind. So it has grown and developed, but this part hasn't caught up with it. So this is what is actually happening already. The art is of the term of surrender or letting go or getting off it is how we penetrate into our undeveloped parts and give them an opportunity to show themselves so that we can be the new parent. We can be the divine being that heals those parts that would otherwise feel abandoned. We become the adult to our child selves, our undeveloped selves. So you got it. There's nothing more. It's very nice to see you. It's like I've seen you many times before. So welcome, Danielle. By the way, are we saying your name correctly? Yes. All right. Thank you.
Awesome.
Welcome. All right.
Okay. So our next question is from Sigrid.
All right, Sigrid.
Yes. Dear Sat Shree and Sachimayi, during my meditations, I sometimes get extremely thirsty. My throat feels like a desert and my tongue like sandpaper. This happens a lot more frequently since the 9-day in September. And the deeper I go in my meditations, the drier, thirstier I get. Sometimes it is a struggle to stay in meditation while this is happening because it makes it hard to breathe. I am looking for some understanding around this to know and maybe understand what is going on in my body when this happens. Another thing that happens during my meditations is that I sometimes hear a ringing sound or an alarm bell that doesn't exist outside of me. I can be in deep meditation and out of nowhere, it sounds like the meditation bell goes off or my alarm clock, the doorbell, or some other ringing sound. If I open my eyes and have a look, I can't find a source of the sound. During the 4-day retreat in January, this happened a lot, and it took me from an unconscious state to a state of more awake in the meditations. During one meditation, I had an episode where it sounded like the meditation bell was ringing constantly for maybe 10 minutes or so. It was ringing, faded out, and started ringing again as soon as it had faded out fully. What is it that I am hearing? Love Secret.
All right, Sigrid. I mean, we're all laughing and we have some charm because it's very, very common experience. So the elements are awakening in you. This is transformation is a bodily event. It dries you out. It creates an imbalance in your electrolytes. It causes you having to rest more. There are so many symptoms of transformation, and you don't realize that it's not just in your head, it's in your body. And you probably are you I don't know if you're learning the elemental techniques or if you've learned them. All right. Well, then you don't need to because they're already awakening on their own. The fire, of course, is the parched feeling. Why is there fire? Because there's still resistance to the current. So the greater the fire, it starts burning the samskaras, the structures of contraction locked up in your cells. And it creates this fire as the resistance yields to the consciousness that's coming. So it's this releasing of the contraction, releases energy. And that energy then perpetuates itself like a virus, goes from one cell to another cell, another cell, until the whole body is aflame. So, and that's fire. The ringing, the sounds, the bells are different frequencies of the air and ether element, and they're awakening on their own too. So it is a transitional process where it's like this cacophony of strange, non-physical events are occurring to you, but there is nothing to worry about. If you're thirsty, drink. It's not going to quench the fire because it's a different kind of burning than water can put out. But water is a soothing element. And one of the ways of being able to handle fire is cool water or coolness. You can wear glass beads. It's in India, it's thought to be to quiet the fiercity of the transformational process. Or you can be in cold water as a way of kind of quenching it. It's only temporary because, of course, the fire is non-physical in its origin. So, it's a good sign. And all the ringing and all the rest of it just lets you know. There are also indications probably that beings are coming through your ether and air element, and they're letting you know with their noise. The ringing and the different sounds can also be the activation is happening in your elements, but it's also kind of bringing a chorus of singing of beings as you emerge out of the shell of your embodiment. So get used to it. After a while, it quiets, or you get used to it and just comes through you. But it sounds also like the mantras that you would have learned through the elemental techniques are already working automatically. That was the case in me and with many people I work with. But it will probably, learning those elemental techniques will help bring a better balance in this transformational process. So I do recommend you contact Yannicka and learn the elementals. You're going to say, well, why do I need to learn fire? I'm already cooking. It's because you bring a balance in, and it brings you the tool of being able to neutralize the different elements to some extent in the practice when you have all of them. Brings better balance. But I remember coming out of meditation, in a pool of water, sweat, just because while I was in the meditation, I was a flame burning. Of course, India is hot enough anyway, but there would be times where, I'd sit and it'd just be normal sweat. But boy, I was learning to be the flame. That's what you're doing, dear.
Thank you, Sigrid. Okay, next up is Lizzie.
Lizzie.
There she is. Hey. All right, dear Sat Shree and Satyamai, I have been on quite a ride since joining the Sangha last spring. Welcome. An aspect of my life that has intensified is my sense of overwhelm in my day-to-day life. I feel raw, an intensified sense of not being able to keep up with all that I used to, mostly social engagements. I have almost no space for them. I do sense that I'm withdrawing my energy from that which I need to withdraw from. But I also can't keep up with my day to day anymore. Should I just hold this, endure calmly, and wait? Also, after the GTP completion, I'm looking at my manifestation in the world. Well, I know that working as a body worker is just a step for me. It is how I support myself financially, and it has served in countless lessons and opportunities to learn to be more embodied, more here, more impactful. I also know that I am so new on this path, and I have to give myself some time to mature with what I'm coming to spiritually. However, if I understood correctly, you advised not to be too invested in the healing arts for various reasons that you went into in a recent satsang. Is it possible for me to hold that body work as just a step on my path, not my ultimate purpose, but also to use it as a way to manifest more fully in the world, to serve others, and to practice grounding into the mother and calling in the Sat while holding another? With immense gratitude, Lizzie. Thank you, Lizzie.
I love it when people answer their own questions. You know, it's like, but what I will do say is that you are in what you imagine it is due to your engagement in transformation, and that it is the vulnerability is not a territory ego likes to be in, but also the overwhelm is due to trying to keep up something of your past life that is no longer serving. So you already know. You just have to say, I can't do this now, guys. I need this time and get, because you do, the old vital patterns of exchange is no longer going to serve you, but it's definitely getting in the way. Feeling obligated or feeling like you should is getting in the way of you creating a safe space for yourself for this process. And here's what will happen with friends: they'll stay or they'll go. And if they go, they might be angry. Who knows? But whenever anything changes, there will be disruption. And some will recognize what you're becoming and some won't. And therefore, the ones who recognize those are the only friends you really need. And you never need friends. If anything, they'll become future devotees. So
That's promising.
you are to be the lead. What is happening for you and the alignment of you, you're leading all the people you know to an opportunity that they may not be aware of or only partially aware of. So follow your path. This is the key to that. All right, now you had some other things that you brought up and with regards to the body worker. All right, here's my instructions for you. If it's part of your material necessity, then do it that much. Don't try to use it to secure a future. Just do it that much. If there is other skill set you have or another opportunity, draw on that. My suggestion is reduce the amount of outer obligations to as simple as you can, and then do what you need to do using that as an opportunity to further your own journey. But if you've got too much going on, then you'll just be, like you said, you're like eating too big of a chunk of elephant at one time. So you want to take it in small pieces. So do what you're doing. You're not going to lose anything. Matter of fact, you're going to become more effective, and it's already been a learning opportunity. All of this enriches our unfolding. If you were working in a bank, or if you were an accountant, or you had some other set of skills, and the issue to look at is a work that doesn't draw your attention out duly outwardly or in your mind, if you can help it, in which you work for the least amount of hours for the most amount of money. And then that becomes how you support yourself as you go through this transition. And then after that, other things will arise that'll take care of you. Yep. There you go. Easy, smeezy.
Thank you, Lizzie. Okay, next is Marluz. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly. She's waving. There she is. All right, dear Sat Shree and Satyamai, I would love to hear how you feel about fasting. This is a great question. It really is. As many people do, I have some strong habits when it comes to food and catch myself using it as a distraction or a comfort. Reading this book, The Transformational Power of Fasting now, and I'm starting to wonder if this might be something that can create a shift movement spiritually for me. I might join the 9-day retreat in March and thinking of doing a 3-day juice, 3-day water, 3-day juice during the retreat. Would love to hear your views on this. Thank you so much. Love, Marluce. This has been an ongoing question for us, usually not during the retreats, though.
I will speak to two conversations. One, fasting, and then its role in the 9-day. Fasting is a way of us getting some mastery over the patterns and habits of our design, being in a body, and also using food as a strategy, in our life. So when we pull back from that, if there's a motive to pull back from that, you should follow it, because it's a teaching and it's a laying claim to parts of yourself that you probably haven't laid claim over, or not laid claim over in an effective way. Now, I have fasted in the course of my life before my awakening a lot. Fasting was very much part of my life. And I've come to recognition of the role it played and the role that it got in the way. So part of it is that periodic fasting is done as long as there is some balance, and what you're describing sounds fairly balanced, and it does allow the body to rest, so it doesn't have to always digest and always process food, and it catches up. Now, it's typically, in my experience, takes about 3 days, and then the body becomes purified, and maybe as long as 5 days. But that's what it creates. Is the danger of doing this beyond 3 days is it creates a reaction. So when you go back to food, everything tastes so good, and the body is like a puppy who hasn't been fed in the day. Rum, 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 wants to eat everything. So you're looking ultimately for some sustainability. So there comes two places. One, first, the initial effort of the fasting, which is usually lasts for a day or a day and a half, and then you start liking it. That was my experience. You become clearer, your body becomes quieter, the meditations are deeper, and then you forget the food falls away, and you discover, a relatively freedom from food. Now, it takes some time. It takes certain circumstances that help support you. Otherwise, somebody comes in with something absolutely delicious, you'll be in a trauma as you wait the next 2 days of your fast. So the issue is, how do we make it sustainable? And how do you make it sustainable? Now, for me, for 20 years, I fasted 1 day a week. And I did it for 20 years, and I found that it kept me on track. But after 20 years, I recognized I didn't need to do it anymore, and that I was just a habit. And the part of the problem is that every time that I would fast, my body went through a certain stress, and then I would start eating again, and my body went through another kind of stress, just about recovering in time for the next fast. So back then, I was a fanatic, so that was perfectly fine. So it took 20 years for me to get over it. Moderation is the name of the game, as the Gita says. You don't need to fast to progress spiritually. Moderation, however, is always wise. And the moderation is a regular, sustainable restraint about the tendencies of eating imbalanced or incorrect food. In the 9-day, I do not recommend fasting, because the forces at work are going to be turbulent enough, and that the body will go through a comparable process that fasting would otherwise bring. But since most of you are at home doing this, then you should plan to eat moderate, maybe not more fresh, lighter foods. Sometimes for some of you, dense food, proteins are needed to handle the pressure of the energy. So find a diet that has worked for you, and then during the 9-day, you'll discover a greater alertness to what your body is telling you about the food you eat. And that will inform the body. At some point, the body will want what's good for it, and it won't want what it's not. That's part of embodiment. These things fade away as a problem. All right, my dear. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Our last question is from Patricia. I got it. Hey. All right. Dear Sat Shree, can you help with 2 things? Oh, I love it. My screen went blank when I started. A bad past life recall, ? question, which has left me with a background of dread, and reliving how it must have felt for Charlotte, my daughter, when I neglected her as a baby.
Okay, good. This stuff's coming up. I'm happy. I'm happy with this. So there's no such thing as bad. There is a past life recall where you are the person in the trauma, and you are no longer a human being. So you're actually in a lived event. It may not have been yours, but your mind converted it into yours. But even so, that trauma of it, we all carry. And because you're now, it seems to be that your body is tapping into the universal trauma a little more than you've had to before. You're beginning to meet these collective, I could be wrong with this, but these collective traumas that are shared that could come from a being over here that you were connected to who's around you right now, or to someone else, or it could be something in your own journey that hadn't had a chance to come out of the subtle world enough so that you could recognize it consciously. So it had to come through you when you were in that in between state so you could meet the trauma of that time. It's all meant to inform you. So I went through a period where I was reliving many lives that recently, most of them I had like 3 lives that I lived bits and pieces of during World War II. And you know, it was different roles that I played and things that I gave up and things that I lost and things that I did where I was burdened with guilt and shame in that battling. So those all came in a sequence. And by the time the sequence started quieting, I recognized, oh, okay, I'm just getting informed of something that I carried that was part of what all of many parts of humanity carried in the Western world for certain, as the trauma of World War II. And then there is this unending unfolding of bits and pieces of structures of trauma that come. Now, for me, they come during samadhis. So I'm in my truth when they come. So there isn't an evaluator of them being mine or wrong or anything. And that seems to be where I'm healing something in the collective. There are quite a few people connected to me who have been doing this for much of their lives, very developed psychic beings who live in those domains, and they do a lot of work with darkness. So I don't know if you've had a lot of exposure with that, Patricia, but that could be part of it. And the other thing is this thing with your daughter, I think it's reflective of a cycle of guna that's coming through you right now, where you're tapping into a more tamasic cycle. It could be an energetic, but anyway, there's attachment, sentimentality, fear, doubt, something in the subconscious second chakra domain. And so attachment to our children then brings this other side of guilt and doubt and shame that comes with that, even if we were a good parent, which we may or may not been or not consistent. But that's the inevitable outcome of every parent with every child. So I think you're just processing all this. There's nothing to do really except recognize that I think you're now diving into deeper territory of your embodiment in that second chakra because these are reflective in subtle worlds, right? The water and earth elements, the lower fire elements. This is where all the turmoil that exists in the collective consciousness uh, uh, goes on. So, in your little place there in England, and sipping your tea and eating your biscuit, now you get to know all the trauma of the universe in ways you haven't had to up to now. Perhaps I don't know how much. Yeah. All right, my dear.
Thanks, Patricia.
Yeah. Welcome to the next level of the work. I'm telling you all we're in transition. What does that mean? It means you've transitioned. And when you've transitioned, then the universe puts you to work. It works 2 ways. 1, more of the stuff you didn't know about your own stuff. And 2, more of the stuff you didn't know about or didn't want to know about of everything else. So it is because a shift has occurred in where you stand that allows for these things to become apparent, but it's doing it for a purpose to show you what is next as we move out of this period of time where we intervened in the collective consciousness to this period of time where we're looking to sustain this transition and bring it so that it continues sufficiently to meet the true peril that's coming. So this is the journey. We change, we become the means for humanity to shift by shifting ourselves and meeting what comes to us when we succeed in integrating that and bringing it into our lives. Becoming a universal being is not a happy event for a human ego. Becoming a universal being is constant showing of that which we have not been able to access before, that brings us into a direct and immediate relationship with that, both the inner reality of what we are and that manifestation outside of ourselves, but also that which resists and opposes that. This is the structure. This is how it works. The more we progress out of our smallness, the more we grow in our presence and our connection to the truth, in order that we can be the adult on the planet that can help lift, be the new Dharma, shift the paradigm for the rest of mankind. So you're all on this journey who have been with me, and does not get better. I mean, that's a retreat. And there are times where, you go back to human, you find that you've got a little second house that you go to and you hide out for a while. Fine. Let's do it for a while. A year or 2 years, next lifetime, but well, it might be too late next lifetime. They might not let you in. We only have squirrels and a couple of crawling creatures surviving. You may not like it. You think it's small in your body now. Oh my God. So, yeah, but we have to recognize that if we give ourselves over to something both greater and truer and more full of love and patience and capacity, but also to that which is still not met. And there is a journey, doesn't end. But I will say what happens. The part of you that would rather have this versus that fades away. And maybe you're left with, like me, just a bit of crankiness about the whole thing. And you just got to keep showing up, coming down, meet the next pile of whatever's coming up for you to that day. But there's nobody laying an investment. There's no one laying claim. There's no one trying to do something other than just showing up. What I do have is I've created a structure, a means by which I live in constant remembrance. And therefore, this is part of the whole thing of New Dharma, is to create a structure for you, to support you to use this structure as you then learn to create a structure that's yours. And bring yourself into this everyday remembrance of what it is you're here for. It's so hard for the human being to keep its attention on what's truly important. It tends to go this way or that way. Like I watched this puppy and I said, God, I know a lot of human beings just like this, chasing after one little thing after another, not forgetting that one while they're chasing the other one. It's just this endless circus. It's a good reminder of what we're working with when we look at our lower nature. So we have to be the adult for ourselves as we go forward in this journey. We have to grow up and in the process, the Supreme comes and joins us, and it becomes all we want to do, and it becomes the only reason to live, and all those other things.
I need to invite some other questions. You have time?
Yeah, we have 10 more minutes or so. So any of you who would like to bring forward a question that might be burning or there for you, we can do that. All right. Helen, come forward. Aha, you did it. Good girl.
Again, the second time. Sorry, Helen.
Yeah. You're doing real good for a newbie. I mean, this is like self-destruction. Throw me off the cliff again. God, that was fun.
Oh my God. Okay.
Good. Enjoy the free fall. Yes. You've leaped. Now you're in the free fall.
Yeah, I have a rather a practical question, actually.
Good.
I like practical.
So in the last month or so, whenever I meditate in the evening, I feel this really in a very particular point in my shoulder, feel a sort of electrical current almost that kind of then in a few seconds time just spreads through my body in such a way that I have to lift my legs, and then I lift my legs, they go down, and then it starts again, and it just continues, and it feels really unpleasant.
Cool. Really?
So now I wonder, but I don't have it in the morning or what any. So yeah, is it a good time to meditate in the evening?
Yes, actually, because what it's indicating is your body's taking in, at least through your shoulder, the transmission that I bring, and that it only can come through the passageways that are more open or currently being worked on. And so, and your movements these are called kriyas, spontaneous movements that occur when the body starts waking up. So not only do you want to meditate, I suggest you meditate longer, and then when it comes, let it ride it out, let it do the movements. Go ahead, jump around, because it's finding its way through your body, which is a great sign. Alan, you're on the verge of something. If you haven't had this happen before, you're on a really an exciting part of the ride. And remember, excitement can be pleasurable and painful. So it could go both ways. But the principle of it is like a roller coaster. It will have its times where it'll be more intense and times where it will be less intense, even more enjoyable, because other things will start happening.
So the movement with my legs coming up doesn't feel like it. I am kind of doing it, but I also cannot stop it. So it's not like it's not.
Yeah.
You want to figure out what it wants to do in your body and move your body accordingly. You want to learn to dance with the energy. Watch. I think you're right. You probably have been allowing it because you're curious if nothing else. But it is actually the beginning of the song in your body. And it wants to dance. All yoga postures came from somebody observing awakening beings going through this process. Say, well, look at what they did. Maybe if I practice what they did, I can get what they've attained. So this is natural occurring process as the body wakes up to this transformative force. It sounds like it's awareness right now. It's coming through the upper chakras, but you can't access it fully in your body except your shoulder. Then your leg movement means that it's entering into parts of you, but it has yet to move into the full transmission, at least in your body. So you hooked onto this horse, and it's gonna drag you along, and the art of it is to let it go with the ride. Eventually, you'll ride the horse. Right now, it's dragging you. Okay, very good.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you. That was good.
Got two more.
All right.
Next up is Isa.
Is in a car.
In a car. Isa.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
So the second to last day on the GTP, there was a huge movement in me speaking to the lack of support from the masculine and for the divine masculine. In my life, in 12-step recovery, in even just men's support groups, in sweat lodge communities, the men's groups have disintegrated and disappeared. And so there was also other participants in the meeting. I mean, I want to keep people's confidentiality, but other people spoke specifically to it. And so I just want to ask you, Sat Shree and Sachamayi, for guidance in how to go about this. I mean, there's one thought which could just be a small men's small group, but then the other way would be, I don't know. I have no idea. So I'm just curious about next steps. And I'm feeling, gosh, I feel my heart is, it's surprising to me that I am the man that I am based on the piece of shit men that have been in my life, you know?
Yeah. And we need men's groups because we're trying to create a new father, a new male principle in our lives. And therefore, there is a real need for it, just like there is in a women's group. And I know that Russell had declared to do that. And
But he was going to do it outside of
yeah,
New Dharma. But I think Arjuna, you
And
may have said something to me in Siddhartha.
yeah, Siddhartha had,
So maybe this is time, guys, to step forward.
yeah.
So if you want to do this, you guys write me,
Yeah.
and we'll just move forward on this. Okay.
This is the purpose of the Mighty Networks platform, is to
Yeah.
incubate these things. Now, I do recognize this for lots of men. The issue is not just with male, but with authority. And therefore, there's this angry rebellion structure, which actually makes us into one of them again, unwittingly. So once we discover the horror of becoming the bad father, then we really work on ourselves to restore and create a new kind of paradigm for ourselves. And that's where Isha, and that is definitely what's clear to me, that we need to bring this forward, and we will. But it's still the same healing in yourself. And it comes up in our relationship, and it probably came up with your other relationship with spiritual teachers, because when you have a bad archetype for authority, it gets in the way of surrender, gets in the way of this the required trust and faith in the process. I had a good father. He wasn't good for all of my siblings, but for me, he was perfect. He was a good man, and he reflected responsibility, yet clear limits and boundaries. And it was very, very helpful in my life's relationship with authority figures, men and women. So the principle here is that it's inherent that the true father lives within us, but without a model, we don't know how to make it real because of the conditioning that comes from having such a father. So I think it's something I'd like to be involved with a bit too, because I see that this, in many of my male students, this is a struggle that has crippled them or defeated their ability to progress with me or with other authorities in their lives. So you're heard, Misha. You've come for a purpose.
All right, you guys. So I'm going to
Hey,
email
Laura.
you. Hey, Laura.
Laura, yes, Laura.
So I'll email the three of you, and then you can give me the feedback, because I know that this came up. People shared this with me. So let's just make it happen.
Yay. Let's make it happen.
That's right. That's what I do.
Yeah, we make things
I was
happen.
looking for, and then I pass it on. Sachigita knows this, as do others, Caroline.
Okay,
All right, guys.
we'll move on.
Okay, and we have one
I think
more.
we have Janet.
Last we have Janet.
Yay, Janet.
Janet,
Hey, girl.
good to see you.
Yay! It was a yay. Okay, so I had an experience that I want to share and then kind of find out if my approach to handling it was a good one. So, excuse me. I've been doing a lot of breath work recently. And after a pretty powerful session last week, what happens with the breath work is that, excuse me, for like the day or two after, I feel like, well, the breath work person says, you're kind of like in this really open space between two places of consciousness, like the net is open and you're going to be more vulnerable. So however that lands with you, but
Yeah,
kind of
It's
makes
probably
sense.
true. It's got a
Yeah.
truth.
it's been my
It-
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I definitely feel more vulnerable. Like I just don't want too much coming in.
Mm.
So I was watching a YouTube video, and it was whales, and they started showing whales being entrapped by gill nets and everything that happens to them, as a result. And I went into the place of, I can't take this. I got to shut the screen down. But I stayed. I didn't. I stayed with it, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try to breathe through this and really work with this, because this is a reaction that I commonly have. So I stayed with it, and I went into such a deep kind of a despondency and darkness in the lower part of my body, and just like an inconsolable sobbing, or I guess that's all I could say. And I
Good
was sort of
description.
coaching myself, stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. And then at one point, it was like, you know what? I'm afraid if I stay with this, I'm going to disappear. It felt like I'm in the spiral of devastation or something. So I pulled myself out, and it took me a little while to actually come way out of it. But in hindsight, I'm curious about what that was, and also curious if I know about enduring calmly. Like, should I have endured calmly further? or was I really kind of going into a direction that I might not have wanted, shouldn't be going into at that time?
All right, Janet, it's a great question. This is the right question to bring because it's a combination of things. First, the breath work brings in the prana and you're awakened. So your body's awakening, and your body is awakening to the subtle worlds with the prana. It's becoming more in touch. Your vital, the vital in the lower vital is opening up, and it's allowing for a greater vulnerability. But the other side of this, which will come, will be immediacy, a fullness. But right now it's vulnerability because it's still growing into it. I wouldn't push it too hard. You don't want to go too fast because this can really blow out a system and make it more difficult to embody it, because so your body takes a while to learn to hold what's happening for you because you're going towards the universal. Like I was saying with Patricia, it is this, you are now tapping into things in the collective, the anguish of the trapped animals. They have a reflection in our own feeling trapped like that and powerless and despair. Maybe not even in this life, but they're mostly a shared cry for the world mother. And you're tasting one little piece of that elephant. So you're diving into it was correct. Now there are two things. You want to know your own limit. So you want to tritate where you step out and resource yourself. But when it comes, if you can stay with that despair, despondency, and that's the doorway to the asat. So that's the deep samadhi. It's very hard to recognize, to keep the consciousness there. But when you go, it's all the unmet parts of consciousness that are locked up in the collective consciousness that you have to go through. It's the dark night of the soul on steroids, because it's not just your own. You're carrying a piece of the collective. So your nature's gone universal, Janet. You're now an expression of the world mother. She's showing you your labor. She's showing you your mission. So it's, for me, it's a wonderful sign to see you on board in this way. I mean, you're so different than when we first met you. It's like unbounded, free, wild creature. It's just lovely. But then the universe puts us to work to keep expanding beyond the boundary of what we've come to. But we don't have to do it too fast. We don't have to seek it out unnecessarily. Let it show itself. If it shows itself, then that's the time to do what you did. So
And
your action was correct.
and the pulling out, that's sort of where I just have to kind of be trusting, like, okay, yes or no. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Because if you do cross the threshold, you'll be dysfunctional. I mean, it'll be a very dramatic inward event. So don't want to push that. Let it come, because it won't be so dramatic if you can take it bit by bit over time
Right.
and
Okay.
let the body catch up with it.
Okay. Okay.
All right, real
I can
good.
do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
Okay, that's all we can do
Yeah.
today. It's great. It was inevitably going to get to this vibration, so we took a bit more than we normally do to get there. Well, it's so much universe has been pretty much synchronous. Synchronicity is very much here with this work, and that's why I'm sure what's happening in this house is a reflection, because they're finishing up the big Satya Mandir right now, and this place isn't matching the
No, and
vibration of that place.
we actually had a conversation about it before any of this happened, about how we needed to put focus on the house we actually live in.
Yeah. So that's the Satya Mandir, but this is the Satya Dhamma. This is the home.
Yeah.
And so therefore they both have to come up. That's clearly what it's calling to. So we've got this lovely new trailer that we're occupying when it's going to be intolerable to occupy the house.
Yeah, with the puppy.
When the outer world reflects what has been accomplished in the inner world, then the transformation is grounding, it's coming, it's landing. And that means we've made it real in our lives. So then we get to deal with how it shows up in our other life. All right,
Okay,
so
let's do 5 minutes.
just do 5 minutes and just come back to your presence. Come back into your body. Come into here now. We'll just take 5 minutes. Be inward. Let the breath penetrate deep into your body. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat Shree. All glory to Supreme. May truth manifest. Namaste. Okay, thank you all once again.